Welcome to Creative Feminine Rising, where modern women are heeding the call to live a sacred life and get connected to their unique stream of creativity so that life is a creative act and a holy act. I'm Dr. Neesa Mills, and today we're going to be talking conversation here with Chrys Kyng. This is part of an author series interview that I'm conducting on Call of the Mystical Mountain, Mt Shasta, and the Emerging Earth. So both Chrys and I are authors in this collection of mystical stories, personal experiences of why it is that Mount Shasta is such an amazing place. I mean, anyone who's been there knows that it's an amazing place. But these stories are an attempt to really share the uniqueness of what gets activated for people on their spiritual journeys by being in contact with this great being who happens to be in the form of a mountain. And we call her affectionately Mama Shasta. So Chrys Kyng, I'm going to read a little bit about Chrys so you can be introduced to him. Having been obsessed with witches, Native American culture, astrology, and all things paranormal from an early age, Chrys writes, I always knew I came here with a big mission. My experience as a musician, actor, and plant-based health coach laid a foundation for the work that I offer today. And after several awakenings and profound mystical experiences, I left my high-paying corporate job to pursue my passion full-time. I am now a shamanic healer, spiritual business mentor, founder of Ascended Astrology and Apothecare Medicine Alchemy, as well as the creator of Microdose, DOS, a line of high-performing microdosing blends. I love creating magical experiences in the form of shamanic ceremonies and medicine retreats that I facilitate in sacred locations across the globe. And I'm passionate about assisting light workers and starseeds in activating their soul mission and healing themselves out of the false matrix and creating a new earth. So yeah, the new earth, an exciting topic. And that is the subtitle of our book about Mount Shasta that I was given that title. And part of our conversation here is really going to be discussing, Chrys, your relationship with the mountain and your understanding of Mount Shasta's relationship with this broader thing that we call the new earth. You know, many of us are just have a sense, a knowing, a feeling about this territory that we call the new earth. And yet it's not fully here. So we don't, it's a little bit hard to talk about, but I do like to try. Yeah. So
Yeah, well, thank you
Chrys,
for
you
having me here.
decided to offer up a chapter in this book, and you call it There's No Place Like Home.
Mhm.
And in it, you do this whole weave of around the Wizard of Oz and how we know that term to be There's No Place Like Home. And it's quite a beautiful story. And I know that people may want to go and pick up the book and read your chapter and other chapters. But just to begin, why don't you just tell me a little bit about There's No Place Like Home and what is that story about?
Well, from the time I was really young, and they'll read this in the chapter, like it said in my bio, I was obsessed with witches of all kinds, but every Halloween from the time I was 3 until I was 8 years old, I was the Wicked Witch of the West for Halloween. And after that, I was Harry Potter. So it was always something magical and
Magic.
yes, and sorcery related, witch related. I didn't think about it as a kid. It was just natural. I mean, I was obsessed with drums and moccasins and headdresses and doing Native American chants, and I had my own made up language and all the kind of prerequisites for much of the magical, spiritual, or shamanic work that I offer and that we offer today. Is it definitely showed up in childhood as I was remembering many other lives that I've had here as a witch, as a medicine person in different parts of the world, and not realizing that yet. But The Wizard of Oz was something that was, although there's a lot of dark energy around The Wizard of Oz and the movie and the book itself and how it was written and what it's about. As a kid, I didn't know any of that. And just as a watching it, it was very inspiring to me. And it had everything I loved, colors and witches and magic and music, because music is a huge healing experience for me and it's language for me, and it's one of my greatest passions. But in I didn't want to be Dorothy. I did want the shoes. I wanted those emerald, or excuse me, ruby slippers. I would put my mom's shoes on and I'd click them together. She had these bright red shoes and I would click them together and it was like a thing. Oh God, he's got the shoes on again. And there was something I feel like I was remembering in those moments. And
Mhm.
because of that, the Wizard of Oz, you know, I was an actor my whole life. From the time I was a little kid, they put me in theater, and The Wizard of Oz was one of those plays that I actually saw on stage when I was really young with my grandmother. And they were like, we have to put him in theater. So they started taking me to acting camps and all that kind of stuff. And then I became an actor in something called the Young Actors Institute, which sort of leads into the Youth Performing Arts School, which at 14 years old, I didn't go to a regular high school. I went to a performing arts high school. And I started in 2005, which was about a year after the musical Wicked came out. And Wicked is a musical which is about the Wicked Witch of the West. And it's basically from her side of the story. So again, it's popped up again. And so this idea of there's no place like home started when I was a little kid, because I often looked into the sky or and wanted to go home. I had this feeling of going home, whatever that meant. And I also did not feel like the rest of my family in any way. Like my little brother is also gay, or not, let's just say not heterosexual. And I don't identify as male. I identify as dual gender or non binary. I don't really have a word for it, but I've always not felt like all of my brothers because I have three brothers. And there was a lot of this theme around magic and witches and feeling like you don't belong. So when Wicked came out, I mean, everyone in my high school was talking about Wicked, and I wasn't really a big musical person, even though I was going to a performing arts high school. But all I could hear was Wicked, Wicked, and I was like, this, now she gets to tell her side of the story. That was what was important to me. And even in that musical, there's a sense of home because in Wicked, where Dorothy wants to return home, which is Kansas, the Wicked Witch of the West finds out that the wizard is not a wizard at all. He has no magic, and he's trying to use her in her magic, to enslave the animals of Oz and take over completely. It's definitely an
Mm.
allegory and a metaphor for what's happening on a governmental level now, but also a false matrix level with the powers that be. And she basically says, like, this is my home, and he came on a hot air balloon into Oz and is pretending to be this wizard and has no power, and he wants to take over and take the voice away of all the animals. So again, it was another, my life tends to reflect itself in the art around me, and or vice versa. And I really felt this call every single time to return home to something. That's what my life has been about, whether it was returning and remembering who my star family was, or returning home to different places, different sacred sites on the planet that I had been before or did work in other lifetimes. But when I went to Mount Shasta, the first time, I felt home in a way that I had never felt before. And one of the most recent times that I've gone to Shasta, about a couple months before we wrote this book, I asked the mountain, what do you need from me? And of course, she said, no, nothing. I don't need anything from you. And I was like, of course you would say that. but is there anything that you want me to do for you, or is there anything you want me to know? And she said, I want you to know that you're home and that this is your home and that this planet is your home and that you came here to make this a safe place for beings of all kinds, but definitely beings in other star systems who are ready to come live here with you all. And that really kind of brought it home, no pun intended, for me about what I'm here to do. And that home to me, because I have Cancer rising in my tropical and true sidereal astrology charts. And so for Cancer rising and Chiron in Cancer, for those who aren't aware, Chiron is the wound that you carry. To have Chiron and my rising sign in Cancer, like home and family and ancestry and belonging to a community and being a part of that is really important to my energy. So that theme just
Mm.
continued to show up over and over and over because as a child, I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel like I was home all the time. I felt like I was abandoned or um, cast out or the black sheep. So often I would click those heels together, hoping that it would take me somewhere that I belonged more or where I was more understood or that I was safer. And so that's what Mount
Mm.
Shasta helped me to ground in is a sense of safety here on this planet that I had never felt before. And that code I plan, I say I plan to, but I don't really have a choice. It's just an embodiment that happened where I'm going to take that safety she offered me and that download into every connection I have with every animal, plant, and human and non-human that I interact with on this planet so that I can really carry the frequency that this is supposed to be a safe place for all and a place of unity and harmony, which is what the new earth is all about and what that quote unquote fifth density or 5D consciousness is all about. So she really helped me ground all of that in. And if I looked back at my childhood, it seemed like childhood folly and make believe and um, just pure imagination, but that's where the magic lies. And so there was this sense of returning back to a childhood innocence and a childlike wonder that because without that imagination, we can't dream up this new earth. And it has to come from that dream place into a reality. And so, yeah, I feel that Mount Shasta did many things for me. One of the other things that I really experienced at Mount Shasta, because I felt my whole life like something was wrong with me and that I was evil, and that because I've done some interesting things in other lives on this planet, okay? Things that I would not do in this life, but definitely showed up in certain ways to be healed or to be witnessed or to integrate. And just from the time I was a little kid, I mean, I thought I was going to hell from the time I was a little kid due to society and religious programming and that sort of thing. So that really lays a foundation for a lot of shame and darkness and self loathing to show up. I mean, many non binary, dual gender, homosexual people, queer people feel that on many levels, but I felt it even on levels that had nothing to do with that. In other, everywhere I went, there was someone trying to villainize me or make me out to be the bad guy, and I didn't understand why. And so I tried to work through that victim consciousness. And it came from the myriad of lives where I had been burned at the stake. I had been um, sought out and used for my abilities. So The Wizard of Oz and then Wicked, which retells that story from a beautiful perspective and point of view, really helped to activate that in me. And it was interesting that I had this whole download with Mount Shasta just a couple months before the movie Wicked came out. And it was like all very symbolic to me. And so
Mm.
the movie and the musical Wicked really solidify the fact that the wizard is the one who is the evil one. If there is someone who's doing something evil, he's actually the one who has the agenda, and that she's being turned into the villain to bring all the people of Oz
Mm.
together for his cause. And so this divine
Mhm.
feminine, green-skinned witch who can't help that she has powers and can't help the way she looks and can't help that everyone's scared of her. She sort of takes on the role of the villain proudly, knowing that behind the scenes she won't get credit for it, but she's going to do all the work to make sure that the wizard and his agenda is dismantled, even though every citizen of Oz thinks that she is evil and wicked. And that really drove that home for me, that it didn't matter what everyone else thought as long as I was doing the work and as long as I was in my power.
Yeah, I have yet to see that movie. I'm making it a point now after reading your chapter, but I'm just really curious about you spoke a little bit about your awakening with the mountain and the teachings that came for you to feel safe and wanted and more clear on your mission in this life. But backing up, part of, I feel like the intent around this book is to give people permission to really listen to what's going on inside of themselves. So you had a corporate job and
Yes.
then you had a spontaneous spiritual awakening. That can be really scary. Like, do you
Yeah.
want to share a little bit about that experience
Sure.
for you?
Yeah, so I had an awakening at 11. And when I was 11 years old, I started to believe that I was God and none of this was real. And I would even tell my mom that I was just dreaming, that I was God and all of this was a dream. And that when I died, I would wake up as God and would know how to create this reality from the mistakes that I made in the dreams or the things that I saw that I didn't prefer. And I believed that from the time I was 11 to 17. And then I became atheist at 17, or I tried to be. It didn't last very long. But, I was just giving context to the fact that I've had multiple awakenings, and then in 2012, at 20 years old, I entered into a karmic relationship with someone who is very dark, and wants to be, is very proudly um, a Satanist and all this other kind of stuff. So I was thrust into many dark themes in this lifetime, and that was another huge awakening for me. And I had in 2015 another awakening where I changed my whole lifestyle and diet. So there was many of these awakenings, third eye openings, paranormal activity around me as a young adult and as a kid that led up to that, where other people I've talked to and many of my clients were literally so like I was interested in astrology at 14, 15 years old. I have clients who are 37 who went through a Kundalini awakening and had no interest in spirituality, never saw spirits in their house. There wasn't anything that prepared them for it. But even though, in all intents and purposes, it seems like I was prepared, when the Kundalini awakening happened in 2018, I there is nothing that can prepare you for that if it happens spontaneously, because I wasn't doing yoga, I wasn't doing meditation regularly. I had been to many meditations as in groups and by myself, and had worked with medicine since the time I was 20, up to that point, and I believe that plant medicine was a catalyst for that as well, but nothing prepared me for that. So I was working in sales, I was working in high-end luxury goods and products, and I wasn't fulfilled, but I was happy. But when that happened, I mean, just everything changed, and that was I actually have it here. I think I have
I
that
think
piece of
you said
paper.
you were in bed for a while, like a month
Oh
or
yeah.
something.
So I
Yeah.
used to see this psychic after that relationship. I started seeing this psychic in Bardstown, Kentucky, because I'm from Kentucky, and she like right here she put 27th year, and I was like 23, and she said when you turn 27, everything will begin for you. And I thought that meant, the music that I was making, because I was an actor, or I was, she said, you're going to have all this success and everything, but when you're 27, everything will begin for you. Well, I went through Kundalini Awakening 3 months after my 27th birthday, and it was so frightening that, as soon as it came on, and this can happen with many people who have Kundalini awakening, is I had severe suicidal ideation from the moment it happened. I was at work. I was working on music because I was making an album at the time, planning to move to Atlanta with my friend. We were making this album. And all of the sudden, I felt this energy come down through my head. It was interesting. It started up here first, and then the anxiety came on. So I thought maybe I'm having an anxiety attack, which I had never had before. I had never had anything like that, but that's what it felt like because it was severe panic and anxiety. I wasn't hyperventilating, but from that point forward, September 28th, 2018 until October 21st, yeah, October 17th, I'm sorry, I didn't sleep. Not once. I mean, I would lay down and be there for 12 hours, but I wouldn't actually go to sleep. I would daydream, but the whole time I was still conscious and my eyes were just closed. So I rested, but I didn't sleep for 21 days. And during that time, I experienced dozens of what they call ascension symptoms, which I didn't know that's what they were at the time. And I was deeply afraid, fighting suicidal ideation. I couldn't even drive until someone had to take me to see this healer in southern Indiana who did her thing on me, and I was able to sleep that night for the first time. And she told me, "You're an empath. Everything is everything in your life changes from this point forward, and here are the things you need to do to protect your energy." And she didn't tell me I had a Kundalini awakening, but I figured that out later because intuitively, and I met all of the symptoms that usually come with that.
Which are what? Tell people who may not know what that
So,
is.
many people can experience ascension symptoms, and they are. I experienced ascension symptoms for several years, up until about 2021, 2022 is when they really started to subside. And now I don't really experience much of it at all. Um, Kundalini awakening, the
What are
symptoms that
those
are more specific
symptoms you
to
want to know?
that, yeah, the Kundalini awakening symptoms that are more specific to that are dreams about snakes, feeling energy traveling around your body, having what is known as kriyas, which are involuntary muscle jerks or spasms, where I was having this like when you kick in your sleep or when you kind of jerk when you're going to sleep or something like that. It was happening every 5 to 20 seconds for 3 weeks. There are spontaneous things that happen with your voice, and your hands will do these weird mudras and things. I thought I was possessed. It was so frightening. Also, the suicidal ideation can come on really strong because your ego is completely being dissolved and you're having ego death constantly. So I wouldn't know who I was for a moment, and then I would come back and I would panic about it. And those are some of the ones that are more specific to Kundalini awakening, as well as the psychosis and no sleep, and it's a little bit more severe. It's not like that for everyone. Some people have a Kundalini awakening during a meditation, and it feels like bliss. It feels incredible, and I have that now. But what Kundalini did for me was brought up all of the darkness and all of the shadow stuff and all of the density, which is what it is intended to do. It's burning through that. I also felt like I was on fire many times. My face felt like it was on fire. And that can be another indication that you're having a Kundalini rising or awakening experience. And it also happened again after I moved to Atlanta a year later in September 2019. I went through another wave of it. So I was wondering if I was going to go through it every year for the rest of my life. I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot go through this again. And, um, but after I moved to Atlanta is when I started getting into mediumship and psychic work because I always knew I could. That lady in Bardstown told me I could do that kind of work. But it wasn't until Kundalini Awakening did I say, okay, let me put the music on hold for a moment. Let me kind of, continue working this corporate job because I actually moved to Atlanta and got a promotion and had more responsibility because I thought it was over with. But then it happened again. And then in early 2020, I started doing readings for people and charging. And I started my website, ChristopherMedium.com, and it has evolved from there. So, although it was extremely frightening, and every single time I thought I was going to kill myself, and several times, and was experiencing a lot of dark energies coming out and interfacing, it really like cleared me out of density trauma and past life cord connection or parallel life cord connection that lasted thousands and thousands and thousands of years back and forward. So for it to be like a 3 or 4 year experience, especially those pockets of a few months of intense, like just suffering is what I can, is how I would describe it. I would say it was worth it because just that small amount of time during, you hate it. But also when you look back, you're like, oh, that headache only lasted a week. You know, during, you want to split your head open. But then once it's over, you're like, okay, a week or a few months or a couple years to clear out thousands and thousands of years of density. I'm I'm so blessed and I'm so grateful. And also, during that time when I wasn't sleeping in 2018 and I was laying in bed, you know, shaking and gyrating and hearing voices in my head and thinking I was going insane. I wasn't thinking Kundalini awakening. That was one of my tabs on the computer. But the other tabs were Epstein-Barr virus, brain cancer. You know, I was considering all of it, you know, psychosis, schizophrenia, because my uncle had schizophrenia. So I thought, well, maybe I'm doomed. I just was considering everything because it was so supernatural that I knew this wasn't just I'm anxious. It was so insane. That's the only word I know how to use. And yeah, I really feel like when I went to Mount Shasta, a lot of what I had been culminating over the years since my Kundalini awakening, really since birth, had all come together and intersected in this beautiful melting pot of self love, groundedness, remembrance, and activation, where all of it was able to come together as a beautiful web and turn into this really solid pillar for me. And I really grounded
Mm.
that in there. And I made a promise to spirit during my Kundalini awakening. I said, if I live through this, if I'm able to get out of this, if I feel normal at some point, just a little bit, if I'm able to eat, I lost 30 pounds during. I was like, I will help other people with this. And I did. I did ascension and awakening coaching for several years, and I helped a lot of star seeds and light workers who are going through their awakening. And I really mastered the ascension process and really feel like I'm, you know, as much of an expert as you can be on something like that that doesn't come with a handbook. But I I really went through the initiation, and it was also my shamanic initiation, which I had been working toward for many years. But if you had told me that was how it was going to go, I would have said, I'm going to stay working at this corporate job and I'm not going to meditate and I'm not going to do any of this because it wasn't love and light and rainbows
As if you had
most
a
of the time.
choice.
Yeah, and I didn't have a choice, nor would I want that. Now that I'm where I'm at, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I don't know that I would do it again, but I'm glad that I did it. I'll just say that. It was they were some of the hardest times in my life other than that relationship I went through back in 2012. Of course, it was 2012. And that was the other experience that really awoke me to my soul path and mission. But when I went to Mount Shasta, like the um, the idea or concept or theme of being wicked, evil, wrong, or the witch that needed to be burned that had been in me my whole life in this incarnation completely released when I was in Mount Shasta. So, and I plan
That's
to move
amazing.
there this year. And I tried to move
You
there
do.
2024, but I was derailed and taken to Sacramento because I have land healing and grid work to do here. But then I'm planning to get to Mount Shasta because it feels like home. It feels like where I want to be. And it also was where I cleared the strongest and darkest frequency in my orchestral symphony, that discordant frequency that wasn't allowing the whole song to really be heard in its purity, cleared during my experience, one of my experiences in Mount Shasta. And so I'm forever grateful to her too. And I made her a promise. I said, if the money keeps coming and the resources keep coming, um and I uphold my promise, and I want you to know that I am going to keep doing this work for the rest of my life. And I made that promise to her.
Mm. So, you and many others, including myself, speak about this mountain as her. Uh, and I think for a lot of people, that's probably just like, what are you talking about? It's a mountain, right? So for people who have trouble making that leap, how would you describe your experience of having this relationship with a being that you
Well,
that comes in the form of a mountain?
well, I have always felt very connected to plants and animals and even rocks and crystals when I was a kid. So that wasn't too far-fetched, but I also was sucked into the matrix and forgot all of that ancient wisdom. But when I started remembering again, I work with plant medicine, but I don't work with them as medicines or as substances. Yes, we do use them internally, but we connect to the spirit of them. So if a plant has a spirit, so can a rock, so can anything that even the stream, a river, once you name it, you give that section of that river or that part of the world its own identity, just like one of your pets or one of the plants in your home. When you name them, you imbue it with a personality. And even though it may be neutral, like Mama Shasta feels pretty neutral to me because she has a very divine feminine raging energy, as all volcanoes are, but she's very masculine in how solid and sturdy and grounding she is. But they are. Um, but I would say I connect a lot with Mama Cacao. And so when I was with Mama Shasta's energy, there is this feeling of this. And as Cancer rising, I have to let you all know this has to come from something personal within you. When other people say Mount Shasta as masculine, it doesn't resonate with me because something that has taken care of me and nurtured me and feels so like home feels like a mother to me. Okay. So whether there is an actual spirit that, well, there is, but whether the spirit wants to present itself as masculine or feminine or not, you are the one that takes that neutral frequency and pulls it through your own experience, and it gives it that based on how you're interfacing with it as an individual. And I believe many, many people have interfaced with that nurturing, holding energy that she has, that Pachamama energy. And so, because we've all named it and said Mount Shasta, just the energy of the word Mama Shasta or the phrase lives around the mountain in the etheric plane for us all to pull from. So it's like, even with some of these medicines I work with, a lot of people see them in journeys the way that I see them. And I'm like, how are they? Not everyone in the world sees Mama Cacao that way. How are these people seeing it that way? And she said, because your medicine is imbued with how you view me. And so they're seeing it that way as well, because they don't know how to connect with
Mm,
me yet. There are people who come that they don't understand how to, what do you mean, Mama Cacao? It's a bean, it's a plant. And I'm like, no, there's a spirit in there. And for humans, when we give it an anthropomorphized or human element to it, it helps us connect to it more. And they're okay with that because it's neutral. So I encourage people to feel into it for themselves and also allow Mama Shasta to be Daddy Shasta whenever they need to be. But it's
yeah.
also there there is a spirit there, and it will appear to you just as sometimes when angels come into our reality, before they come from the upper dimensions into our dimension, they have to pass through the fourth dimension, which is our collective mind, which is our belief systems and our thoughts. And so many people, because they sense it as a foreign entity, their fourth dimensional mind will turn it into something scary or demonic when it's not. And so they didn't actually see a demon sometimes. They're actually interfacing with a Arcturian or an angel, and it is our belief systems that are imbuing it because a lot of it is neutral or it doesn't actually have that form. But I encourage people, when you're connecting to it, of course, you're going to connect to something that feels more like a person or a mama than just this big lump of matter there, which it is not just a big lump of matter. I mean, I want you all to look at a picture of Mount Shasta or many of these other volcanic entities in the world, these huge apex points that it's like, it just seems very intentional. And I keep getting this download that places like Mount Fuji, Mount Kilauea in Hawaii, Mount Shasta, they're actually temples. These volcanoes are temples. They're the way in which Earth is able to release and also to form itself again. But also, that's why beings from other places and the earth itself establishes these locations as temples or sacred spots because of the ley lines and the force of nature there. So I have connected to it as mama, but anyone can connect to it how they wish. They are very
Yeah, regardless, there is clearly a force, and
totally.
many people report experiences of being called to Mount Shasta from all kinds of dream states
Yeah,
and being across the globe. And
yeah,
you share in your story that you were in Sedona and you just heard Shasta,
yeah,
and you knew
yeah.
you had to
And I
go
had
there.
heard of Mount Shasta before, where other people, I have clients, excuse me, I have clients who they had never heard of Mount Shasta and they started having a dream about this mountain and then someone said it and they said, I wonder if it's that mountain I keep having dreams about. I had heard about it, but it was just like
Yeah.
instant. It was just like, and it was ominous too. It was just like Shasta. And I was like, okay, I get it now. I get what's happening here, or at least I thought I did. And so, because I had
Yeah.
taken people to Sedona, it was my first retreat that I ever had in a sacred spot because I was usually just having them in Georgia where I was living in the beautiful mountains up there. Well, I went to Sedona because I was called in a dream to take people to Sedona and to do grid work, which I didn't even really know what that meant at the time, and to gather together and do this healing. And that's where she was able to drop in. I think the magnitude of Shasta wasn't even able to drop in for me until I got close enough to her frequency in Sedona. And it was almost like a trial run. That's what Sedona felt like to me. And I knew that, but I didn't know where it was going next. I was just following the breadcrumbs back home.
Mhm. Yeah, home. Yeah, yeah, I hear that. So Mount Shasta and the emerging new earth, like, how do you connect those dots? How does it feel to you that Mount Shasta is present and important in distilling this kind of consciousness that is needed for a new earth?
Yeah, I feel very connected to Lemurian consciousness and that civilization. I don't really connect very much to, I do, Atlantean, but I feel very connected to Earth the way it was before the false matrix was implemented and before reptilian consciousness really infiltrated and the types of humanoid beings that were here many, many thousands of years ago, not just 5 or 6 or 10, many. And so places like Mount Shasta have always lived on these ley lines and was a very sacred. Every planet has pillar points. They act as like little capitals of states that hold the energy of the planet in place because Earth itself has a Kundalini energy and has chakra points. And Mount Shasta has been one of these sacred locations for eons and eons, millions of years. And so this new Earth really isn't, it is new because we're actually creating something that's never been before. But before we can really get jazzed up about it being new, I like to call it true Earth because we actually have to sort of go back in time and restore what happened in the past 400,000 years, past 30,000 years, and past 13,000 years. And we really have to go back to where the earth was before because I had a spirit guide come to me in the shower a few years ago and say, the fifth dimension is not in the spaceship, it's not in the galactic center, it's not in the Pleiadians, it's not up there. It's here, it's in the leaves, it's in the squirrels, it's in the rocks. It was very specific. And I understood what it meant, but it was just so simple that this new age and spiritual community can't always grasp it because they're wanting something galactic and extremely awe-inspiring because they're so used to being here. They think that this can't be the fifth dimension when the fifth dimension is the rainforests. Uh, when you're on Mount Shasta in pure stillness and feeling that energy, you're in the fifth dimension right now. You're in the new earth or true earth where it was before because Mount Shasta was Mount Shasta way before any of this happened. So she and many other places on the planet hold the key and hold the codes of remembrance for this new earth or true earth that's trying to restore and come in. And once we restore that
Mhm.
true earth frequency, that original divine template, which it existed within and still does, that's the part I want everyone to understand is that Tara or 5D Earth is, if we want to call it that way and give it a name, exists now. The third density is just a dimensional phase away. It doesn't mean that it's somewhere else or it has to be built. It's already ready for us. We have to, as we climb back up or we build pillars of light up into this new earth or true earth, we're actually restoring pillars that were already there through remembrance rather than getting something new that's happening. And then once we're in that frequency of 5D, which Mount Shasta really holds that very strongly, she emanates that, like constantly being a lighthouse or um, kind of a representation and of this energy constantly. Because if places like that were to be destroyed, all memory and all codes and data banks and wisdom keeping codes would completely be decimated as well. So just being there actually tunes you into the true earth frequency. And I love that Mount Shasta's energy because when I leave physically the location, I carry the mountain codes with me. And I know we do this in many regards. We do this after we work with certain plant medicines. You carry that code with you, but it's like you don't have to actually be in Mount Shasta to still be doing the work that she offers. And so that
Mm.
again
Beautiful.
is
Yeah.
true
Really
earth
good point.
and new earth because it transcends space and time in the limitations that that comes with as well. So you can feel it when you
Mhm.
go there, even in the town, the people that are there, there's just a different energy and it just operates a little bit more on the original frequency that happened before we had certain forces that came and shifted the way that humanoid beings on this planet operated and connected to the world around us.
Yeah. So on that note, you're talking about this true earth and this sort of original template of what is available to us as human beings. And then you also use the term ascension guide, which to me, when I hear the word ascension, I feel like there's something going out, evolving into more galactic spaces and more divine spaces. So I know that you are an ascension guide. So just people want to understand what this means more, kind of weaving those two concepts together and how they might use you as a mentor to help them with that. Just
Yeah.
address that.
So I've been on this path for many, many, many lifetimes, but definitely in this life I've gone through the ascension symptoms that are happening from Kundalini awakening, which are their own category, but also the ascension symptoms that have been happening since the 80s and especially since 2012, since we took this huge galactic shift. And ascension can be galactic, and it definitely is more divine. And I want everyone to think about it like the solar system that we're in is currently making its way and spiraling toward the galactic center. And there are other planetary systems out there that are moving away from the galactic center in the great spiral. Well, we're moving back, and so our frequency is continuing to grow. So the false matrix, the implementation of this 3D reality, which isn't even really organic, is going to dismantle regardless because of the natural order of the universe and the plasmic field that we're entering in, which is causing the sun to release all of these solar flares, which is affecting the Schumann resonance, which is affecting us as above, so below. Well, for me, I really feel very called as a shamanic practitioner because shamans and shamanic healers act as bridges. They're bridge builders and they're gatekeepers between realms, whether it's the physical and non physical, or 3D and 5D, or the human self and the higher self. The shamanic energy is there to open those gateways and to create these bridges that you can safely pass through and pass back to. So that's really, I have no interest in becoming enlightened. That's going to happen. It will happen for all of us once we're out of this false matrix and this density level. But that's not necessarily my goal. My goal is to help people remember, because ascension feels like we're going up, we're going to go to the Pleiades, we're going to go to the galactic center, and it's actually, we're going to bring all that beautiful galactic energy down into Earth, making Earth more and more divine so that it can be heaven on earth. That is my main goal in this lifetime, is to restore that Garden of Eden and that heaven on earth, which is what this planet was supposed to be, a beautiful terrarium and playground and paradise for beings of all corners of the universe to come and experience joy and a landing spot and to live here and take up space in harmony. And so I think I'm answering your question, but the point of ascension for me is that if we can remember that this was already a place that we've been before, then we'll naturally rise to that occasion. And so that's really what I'm here to help people do, is remember the codes that they've brought in, remember their star family, understand the nature of what's happening to their physical body at this time and their mental body. And I use ascended astrology, which is a form of astrology that I've downloaded and work with, which is not the same exactly as traditional astrology or tropical astrology. And I use that to help people tap out of the matrix using certain geometry. I'm going to say divine geometry rather than duality or matrix geometry. And then I also use plant medicine and light language and many other healing modalities to help people remember and clear their body of the toxins, the mind control programs, the densities that are keeping them tethered to not just Earth. Earth, you can be an ascended master and an angel in physical form on Earth as long as Earth doesn't exist in this extremely dense um, duality state that isn't conducive for holding as much light as we're meant to. So I'm also here to help
Mhm.
people activate their DNA so that we can become those perfected humans, or Adam Kadmon, as they would call it in, I think, Hermeticism or Kabbalistic teachings, which I don't resonate with all of that. But we are meant to be God in human form. And we are, but we're cut off from so much of that. Only two strands of our DNA is active when there's 12, or really 13 if you count the whole strand. And that is a shame to me. So that's part of the work that I'm here to do as well, is to restore that. And so it doesn't always mean that we'll go to another planet or that we will no longer be on this planet. It's that there will be a version of this planet that is so high dimension or high vibrational and so beautiful that even angels will want to live here. You know, that's the goal.
Yeah, so activating our DNA and activating our capacity to travel between the dimensions and be all of
Yes,
that at the same time,
yes,
well-being and
yes.
body.
To be the
That's how I
fullness of who
feel.
you are, so that it's like
Yeah.
we have this whole soul energy and the higher self, and we're only expressing so much of that. Imagine if we were expressing 100% of it in physical form. See, people think at one point I won't be physical, I'll just be a bubble, I'll just be a star. And that is some people's journey. But like the ascended masters or beings like that show us, you can be completely multidimensional and completely enlightened, soul infused in a physical form. And for it to be able to pass through dimensions, that's our divine right.
Yeah, indeed.
And Mount Shasta really helped me
So
ground that
you
in. A
take
lot of
people
that
on
information.
retreats and you do
Yeah.
shamanic work and
Yep.
journeys with people. So we'll make sure that underneath this video, there'll be a way for people to
Yeah.
contact you if they feel the desire to make you a guide for themselves.
Yes. And if
So is there
anyone is called
any
who is
parting
watching this,
words,
I'm
anything
honored.
else,
I'm sorry?
anything else you want to share as we close out here?
Yes. Thank you all for reading this book. We put our heart and soul into it, and it's a beautiful compendium of many of ancient knowledge and personal experience and real life practical uses for Mount Shasta. And I'm just really proud to be a part of it. And I thank you all for witnessing us during this time and doing the work and being a part of the new earth or true earth frequency. And because we are the pioneers. And so I see you and I love you all.
Blessings. Thank you, everybody.